Billionaire mocked the waitress's simple dress, then discovers who she really is. What if the person you dismissed as ordinary turned out to be extraordinary in ways you never imagined? On a rainy Thursday evening in downtown Chicago, 42-year-old tech mogul James Crawford adjusted his $1,000 tie and stepped into Rosie's Diner, a modest family restaurant tucked between towering skyscrapers. The contrast couldn't have been starker, his tailored Italian suit against the checkered floors and worn vinyl booths. He'd only ducked in to escape the downpour, planning to wait 5 minutes before his driver circled back. But as he shook raindrops from his coat, his eyes fell upon a waitress in her late 30s, wearing a simple floral dress that had clearly seen better days. The fabric was faded, the hem slightly frayed, and James felt a familiar smirk cross his lips. In his world of designer everything, such simplicity seemed almost comical. He had no idea this chance encounter would shatter everything he thought he knew about worth, success, and the true meaning of wealth. "Where are you watching from tonight?" The waitress approached his corner booth with a genuine smile, her name tag reading Elena in careful handwriting. She moved with quiet grace despite the diner's chaos, orders being called out, coffee pots clattering, and the steady hum of working-class conversations. James noticed her hands were steady as she poured his coffee, though her dress told a story of modest means. The floral pattern was cheerful but clearly from a discount store, the kind of clothing his housekeeper might wear on her days off. "What can I get you tonight?" Elena asked, her voice carrying a warmth that caught him off guard. There was something refined about her speech, an unexpected eloquence that didn't match her appearance. James glanced at the laminated menu with its hand-drawn illustrations of burgers and pie slices. In his usual restaurants, menus were leather-bound presentations of culinary artistry with prices that could feed a family for weeks. "Just coffee," he replied curtly, already pulling out his phone to check his messages. 3 board meetings tomorrow, a merger worth millions in the balance, and here he sat in this establishment. "The apple pie's homemade if you change your mind," Elena offered gently before moving to attend to a family of 4 squeezed into a nearby booth. James watched her interact with the children, her face lighting up as she listened to a 6-year-old explain his drawing on a napkin. She complimented his artwork with such sincerity that the boy beamed, and even his tired-looking parents smiled. As the evening wore on, James found himself oddly fascinated by Elena's interactions. She knew everyone's usual orders, remembered personal details about their lives, and somehow managed to make each customer feel like the most important person in the room. When an elderly man fumbled for his wallet, she quietly told him not to worry about the tip. When a young mother struggled with a fussy baby while trying to eat, Elena offered to hold the child for a few minutes. Yet every time James looked at her dress, that simple, worn garment, he felt a mix of pity and superiority. In his world, appearance was everything. Status was measured in labels and price tags. Success was visible from across a room. How could someone so ordinary seem so content? It irritated him in ways he couldn't quite explain, as if her contentment challenged something fundamental about his own carefully constructed world. The diner began to empty as the evening stretched on, but James remained, no longer hiding behind the excuse of waiting for his driver. He'd sent his car away an hour ago, drawn into observing this small world that operated on principles so foreign to his own. Elena continued her work with unflagging kindness, even as the night shift brought its own challenges. A heated argument between 2 customers that she diffused with gentle words, a teenager counting coins for a single coffee who left with a full meal somehow. When Elena finally approached to refill his cup, James felt compelled to speak. "Busy night," he observed, his tone carrying just enough condescension to establish his position as someone accustomed to finer things. "Every night's busy here," Elena replied with a soft laugh. "But that's what makes it wonderful. All these lives intersecting, people sharing their stories over coffee and pie. There's something beautiful about feeding people, about giving them a warm place to rest for a while." James almost scoffed. Beautiful. This was survival, nothing more. People came here because they couldn't afford better. Yet something in Elena's eyes stopped him, a depth that seemed to hold secrets, experiences he couldn't quite fathom. "You seem educated for this type of work," he said finally. immediately regretting how it sounded. Elena's smile didn't falter, but something flickered behind her eyes. Education comes in many forms, she replied quietly. Some of the wisest people I know never set foot in a university. Before James could respond, a young man burst through the diner door, his work uniform soaked from the rain. "Elena!" he called out, relief evident in his voice. "I didn't think you'd still be here. My car broke down 3 blocks away." Elena was already reaching for her purse. "How much do you need for a cab home, Tommy?" "I couldn't ask you to." "Nonsense. We take care of each other here." She pressed bills into his hand despite his protests. James watched this exchange with growing confusion. The woman who wore a faded dress had just given away what was likely a significant portion of her tips without hesitation. If this moment touched your heart, please give the video a thumbs up. As Tommy left with grateful thanks, Elena returned to cleaning tables. But James caught something else, a slight tremor in her hands, a weight to her movements that hadn't been there before. The simple act of generosity had cost her, yet she'd given anyway. For the first time that evening, his smirk faded completely. The revelation came when Elena thought she was alone. James had retreated to the restroom, but as he returned, he paused behind the kitchen door, frozen by what he overheard. Elena was on the phone, her voice strained with exhaustion. "Mom, I know the payment's late again. I'm doing everything I can." She pressed her free hand to her forehead, the weight of worry etched in every line of her posture. "The medical bills from your surgery are they're more than I expected. I've been working double shifts, but it's still not enough." James felt something uncomfortable twist in his chest as he listened to Elena promise her mother she'd find a way to catch up on the mortgage payments. The woman who'd just given away her tip money was struggling to keep her family's home. The simple dress suddenly took on new meaning, not carelessness or lack of taste, but necessity. Every dollar was accounted for, every expense carefully weighed against more pressing needs. "No, Mom, don't apologize. Taking care of you is the most important thing. We'll figure this out." Elena's voice cracked slightly. "I love you too. Try to get some rest." When she hung up, Elena stood alone in the empty diner for a moment, allowing herself 30 seconds of vulnerability. Her shoulders sagged under burdens that James was only beginning to comprehend. Then, with visible effort, she straightened, smoothed her faded dress, and walked back into the dining area wearing the same genuine smile she'd carried all evening. James felt ashamed of every judgment he'd made, every assumption about her character based on her appearance. Here was someone facing financial hardship with more dignity than most of his wealthy acquaintances displayed at charity galas. Elena wasn't serving tables because she lacked ambition or education. She was sacrificing her own comfort to care for someone she loved. "Ready for your check?" Elena asked, approaching his table with professional composure intact. "Actually," James said slowly, "could you tell me about this place? How long have you worked here?" Something in his tone must have changed, because Elena paused, studying his face. "3 years now. Since my mom got sick. It's honest work, and the owner treats us fairly. Sometimes that's worth more than a bigger paycheck." She gestured around the humble diner. "Plus, I get to meet interesting people every day. Have you ever faced something like this? Let us know in the comments." James realized she was including him in that category, despite his earlier rudeness. The generosity of spirit was staggering. "Elena," James said carefully, setting down his coffee cup, "what if I told you I might be able to help with your mother's situation?" She looked at him with polite confusion. "I'm sorry. I'm James Crawford. I own Crawford Technologies." He watched for recognition, but Elena simply waited for him to continue. "I'm in a position to help people sometimes, when circumstances are unfair." Elena's expression shifted to gentle concern. "That's very kind, but I couldn't accept charity from a customer." "I appreciate the thought, though." James felt a sting of admiration mixed with frustration. Even facing a financial crisis, she maintained her dignity. It wouldn't be charity. What if it were an investment? In someone who clearly understands the value of hard work and caring for others. I don't understand. James pulled out his business card, but instead of handing it over immediately, he leaned forward. Before tonight, I would have looked at this place, looked at your dress, and made assumptions about your worth as a person. I'm not proud of that. But watching you tonight, seeing how you treat people, how you sacrifice for your family, I've learned something important. Real value has nothing to do with designer labels or bank accounts. Elena's eyes widened slightly as recognition finally dawned. Crawford Technologies was a household name, and James Crawford was regularly featured in business magazines. But instead of the excitement or deference he usually encountered, her expression remained thoughtfully guarded. You know, she said slowly, earlier this evening, you seemed to find my appearance amusing. Was I wrong about that? The directness of her question hit like a physical blow. James felt heat rise in his cheeks. No, you weren't wrong. And I'm deeply ashamed of that. You've shown me more grace and wisdom in one evening than I've seen in years of business meetings and social events. Elena studied him for a long moment, then sat down across from him. Mr. Crawford, I appreciate your change of heart, I really do. But I need you to understand something. This dress may be simple, but it's clean and honest. I bought it with money I earned. My mother raised me to believe that dignity comes from how you treat others, not from what you wear. If you're offering help, I need to know it's because you genuinely respect that philosophy, not because you pity it. If you've been enjoying this story, subscribe to our channel for more heartwarming tales. James realized this was his moment of truth. How he responded would determine not just Elena's future, but his own understanding of what it meant to be truly successful. You're absolutely right, James said, his voice carrying a sincerity that surprised them both. And you've taught me something I never learned in business school. I've spent years measuring success by acquisition, companies bought, profits generated, possessions accumulated. But watching you tonight, I've seen what real wealth looks like. It's in your generosity to Tommy when you could barely afford it. It's in the way you made that little boy feel proud of his drawing. It's in your dedication to your mother's care, even when it costs you everything. Elena listened quietly, her hands folded on the table between them. So here's what I'm proposing, James continued. My company has a foundation that provides grants to family caregivers. It's legitimate, completely above board, and designed for situations exactly like yours. Additionally, I've been looking for someone to help oversee our community outreach programs, someone who understands what real service means. The position would pay well enough to cover your mother's medical expenses and then some. Mr. Crawford. James, please. And before you answer, I want you to know that my offer has nothing to do with pity and everything to do with recognition. You've demonstrated leadership, compassion, and integrity in ways that most of my executives never could. The simple truth is, my company would be lucky to have someone like you. Elena was quiet for several minutes, processing the unexpected turn her evening had taken. Can I ask you something? Of course. What made you come in here tonight? This isn't exactly your usual environment. James smiled ruefully. I was avoiding the rain. I planned to wait 5 minutes and leave. Instead, I spent 3 hours learning that I've been living my life completely wrong. He gestured around the diner. This place, these people, you've shown me what community actually means. What service actually looks like. I came in here thinking I was so much better than everyone else, and I'm leaving knowing that I have a lot to learn about being human. Elena extended her hand across the table. I'd like to hear more about this position. Not because I need rescuing, but because it sounds like meaningful work. As they shook hands, James felt something shift in his understanding of the world. The woman in the simple floral dress had just given him a gift far more valuable than any business deal. She'd given him perspective, humility, and hope that he could become better than he'd been. 6 months later, Elena's mother had recovered and was living comfortably. Elena had indeed accepted the position, bringing to Crawford Technologies community programs the same warmth and wisdom she'd shown in Rosie's diner. And James. He learned to see past surfaces, to value character over clothing, and to understand that sometimes the most important lessons come from the most unexpected teachers. The simple dress hanging in Elena's office closet served as a daily reminder that true worth has nothing to do with price tags and everything to do with the size of one's heart. If you enjoyed this story, please remember to like, leave a comment with your thoughts, and subscribe for more heartwarming tales. Thank you for joining us on this journey of discovery and redemption.